In the mid-12th century, during the reign of King Stephen, between 1135 and 1154, several reapers were working in a field near the rural village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England. It was harvest time. They discovered two children, a boy and a girl. It's not certain whether the children were dangerously close or inside one of the nearby wolf pits, which were man-made ditches used to trap wolves. While the children looked like those in the village, they had green-tinged skin. According to one account, they were also strangely dressed. Their clothes had an unusual color and were made from materials that the locals couldn't recognize. Moreover, they spoke in a language none of the villagers could understand. The children were taken to the home of Sir Richard de Calne, a local squire living at Wykes Hall, which was 6 miles away. They were given food, including bread, but the children cried and refused to eat. In one version of the story, the children wouldn't take the food even though they were almost fainting from hunger. This went on for days. It wasn't until the children came across some raw fava beans did they start to eat. In some versions of this tale, the children found the beans in Sir Richard's garden, eating them straight from the ground. In other versions, it was the villagers who offered them the freshly picked beans, with the stalks still attached. In any case, they ravenously devoured the green beans. It is said that they survived on this food for months until they learned to eat other foods such as bread. The children lived in the home of Sir Richard for several years. Their skin gradually lost its greenish hue, turning into a normal color. Sir Richard decided to have both children christened, but the boy, the younger of the two, died shortly after. According to some accounts, he has been sickly and often lethargic since the reapers found them. The girl, on the other hand, was able to adapt to her new environment, learning how to communicate with the locals in English. She was given the name Agnes. Agnes was eventually able to relay their story to the locals. She claimed that they were brother and sister. They came from St. Martin's Land, a place underground where the sun didn't shine. Instead, it was always twilight, and everything was green, including the people. She also described a huge river that separated their home from another bright land. According to Agnes, she and her brother were tending to the family's cattle when they came upon a cavern. They went inside and wandered in the darkness before hearing the delightful ringing of the bells. They decided to follow the sound, which eventually led them to emerge from the other end onto a land with bright sunlight, which had frightened them. That was when the reapers found them. Agnes worked as part of Sir Richard de Calne's household for years. Later on, she married a local from King's Lynn, which is a nearby county in Norfolk. It is said that Sir Richard described Agnes as extremely lascivious and insolent in her later years. Some believe that the man Agnes married was a senior ambassador of Henry II with the surname Barre. But this has never been verified. The Green Children of Woolpit is a story that has fascinated many over the years. Some believe that the children never existed. Instead, they are part of a folktale that has become an Old English legend. Some historians believe that the story is a distorted or exaggerated account of an unusual occurrence that actually took place in the Middle Ages. And then there are those who argue that these children were from a fairy underworld or extraterrestrial beings who desired to learn more about human affairs. So, which is it? It would be incredibly awesome if these children were proof that a fairy underworld existed or there was life out there in the universe. Unfortunately, there is little to no evidence that can help us prove that one of these two theories is correct. But there is evidence that these children did exist, and they may just have been plain old human beings. As bizarre as it sounds, the story can actually be traced back to written accounts given by two famous English historians. The earliest account was written by an Augustinian canon, William of Newburgh, who lived in a closed-order monastery in Yorkshire, hundreds of miles away. In Book 1, Chapter 27 of his book, Historia Rerum Anglicarum, Latin for History of English Affairs, which was published in 1189, he stated that he was reluctant to write about the Green Children at first, because it was so unbelievable. He only changed his mind because he heard the story from many highly respectable people. The second account was written by a monk named Ralph of Coggeshall. He was the abbot of a small Cistercian monastery in North Essex, located around 26 miles from the village. He traveled around East Anglia during the late 12th century. Reportedly, he heard the tale of the two green children from Sir Richard himself. He included the story in his book Chronicon Anglicanum, or the Chronicle of England, which was published in 1220. There are minute differences between the stories recorded by these two historians. For example, in Ralph of Coggeshall's version, the children were tinged with green. The story told to William, on the other hand, claimed that the children were definitely green. In Ralph's account, the children followed the cattle into the cavern where they got lost. According to William, the children didn't know how they arrived in the fields of Woolpit. They just found themselves there after they heard a loud noise while they were tending to their father's cattle. It's quite possible that some elements of the story changed due to the retelling, especially in William's case. He heard second-hand or even third-hand accounts from travelers visiting the monastery. But it is clear that the two accounts, though written independent of each other, bear a lot of similarities. William's account states that the story took place during the reign of King Stephen, while Ralph of Coggeshall states that the children appeared in Woolpit during the reign of Henry II, which was after King Stephen. That being said, the period of time referred to in both accounts are pretty close to each other, so we are inclined to believe that the event did take place, sometime between King Stephen and King Henry II's reigns. Now, if they did exist, which we believe they did, where did they come from? Why did the children have green skin, wear strange clothes, and speak gibberish? Some historians believe that Agnes and her brother were the children of Flemish immigrants that may have wandered away from one of the settlements in Fornham St. Martin, which was north of Woolpit, situated across the River Lark. During the early 12th century, many immigrants came to eastern England from Flanders. During the reign of King Henry, many Flemish immigrants were persecuted and killed, particularly in the area near Woolpit. In fear of the king's soldiers, these immigrants often spent time hiding in basements or damp makeshift houses. This can account for the girls' description of their land, which was dark all the time with little sunlight. Their strange clothes and speech can be attributed to the fact that they were foreigners, not locals. During the Middle Ages, there were dozens of languages and dialects that were spoken throughout England and its neighboring countries, including Dutch, Gaelic, Welsh, Old East Norse, Middle High German, and Manx. The foreign clothes could simply be a matter of differing cultures. As for the unknown material, this was not present in Ralph of Coggeshall's account. Perhaps this is simply an embellishment by one or two of William's sources. As for the green skin, this isn't as strange as it sounds. According to Ralph's account, the children's skin had a green tinge. Not extraterrestrial green, just a greenish hue. The harsh living conditions and lack of a proper diet in the Flemish settlements may have caused the children to suffer from hypochromic anemia, which is a common medical condition. Hypochromic anemia, which was historically known as chlorosis or green sickness, can cause the children's skin to have a green hue. Another symptom of this condition is a lack of energy, a symptom that appeared on the little boy as well. Both historians report that after the children started eating other types of food, the greenish hue on their skin gradually faded and later became a normal color. This strongly suggests that the children did suffer from poor nutrition and a vitamin deficiency that was cured by eating a more nutritious diet. Another possible cause for the children's abnormal skin color is poison, specifically arsenic. The children may have been fed poison by their guardian and left somewhere to die. The poison could have left a green tinge on their skin. It also could have weakened the young boy's body, making him feel tired all the time and eventually killing him. However, there is no evidence to support this theory. Malnutrition is still the most likely explanation. Other than the strangeness of their language, speech, and clothes, these children were actually quite normal. They were able to recognize the beans as food. They were able to adapt to their new environment, learning English quite well and serving in Sir Richard's household to pay for their room and board. According to Agnes, they came from a land that practiced some form of Christianity. They had churches there as well. Moreover, both accounts suggest that the children had some understanding of the concept of baptism. At the very least, they must have understood the significance of getting baptized. In addition, Agnes talked about tending to their father's cattle. This shows that she came from a place that practiced some form of pastoral farming. It's not that different from the people in the village of Woolpit and surrounding areas. In fact, the village was part of a densely populated rural area in England that was mostly agricultural. So it's a safe assumption that these children came from a nearby place, above ground, not underneath the earth or high above the heavens. And then there's this phrase in William's account describing Agnes as a grown girl. Nec in modicio a nostri generis feminis discrepate, which translates to, she differed in no way from the women of our nation. Of course, according to Richard de Caun, she was also extremely lascivious and insolent, but this may be due to her personality rather than her origins. What about that sound the children heard? Well, the village of Woolpit was part of the Abbey of Bury St. Edmunds, around 7 miles east of the main town. It is entirely possible that the bells heard by the children came from the church in Bury St. Edmunds. Let's also keep in mind that Agnes was just a young girl at the time. Her memories cannot be completely relied upon. Some details may have gotten blurry, jumbled up, or romanticized, especially since everyone in the village considered her and her brother as incredibly strange. So, did these children really come from an alien planet or another dimension? Were they part of an underground kingdom or a lost civilization? Based on all these details, we can safely assume that these two children were a lot more like human beings than fairies or aliens. So, what's our conclusion? Let's break it down. What do we know for certain? We know that these children were separated from their parents and far enough from home that they were unable to go back, and for whatever reason, no one had ever looked for them. It's possible that they had been abandoned by their parents or became orphaned. As for the rest, we can only guess what most likely happened based on the evidence unearthed by all the people who were fascinated by this puzzling mystery. Agnes and her brother were children of Flemish immigrants who wandered off and got lost until they were found by the Reapers. Their parents may have been killed during one of raids organized by the king to clear out all Flemish immigrants in the area. Their strange behavior, language, and clothes were simply because they came from a foreign country. The villagers found them strange because they had never encountered these immigrants before. Their green skin was most likely caused by their harsh living conditions and poverty. Our scenario of what most likely happened sounds dull in comparison to some of the theories proposed online. So, we'll leave this up to you to decide whether it's a folktale, an otherworldly encounter, or an immigrant's tragic story. As William of Newburgh said, "Let everyone say as he pleases, and reason on such matters according to his abilities. I feel no regret at having recorded an event so prodigious and miraculous."